Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Geethaa Ghaneckar. Geethaa is the Chief HR Officer at Raheja Universal Limited. Geethaa, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Chris, for having me. Very well.
Thanks for joining us. Geethaa, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your journey to becoming the Chief HR Officer within the organization.
Great. So I have been in this business of working and creating value, I think, for about 25 years now. Started off with marketing and sales as my first profession, and really enjoyed doing that till I happened to bump into somebody who did organizational transformation work. Got very intrigued with the kind of impact they could create. And actually gave up a decade-old career in sales and marketing to join the organization transformation outfit, which is based out of Delhi in India. And worked with them for about 5 years, then moved on to hardcore HR and took up a portfolio in learning and development as the Chief Learning Officer for a couple of organizations, including American International Group, AIG in India. Then moved to an organization called Raymond. Raymond is a lifestyle and fashion company in India, a leading player in men's fashion, actually. Been there as a head of HR for the lifestyle business for about 9 years, and recently moved into Raheja Universal. Raheja is a major player in real estate sector, based out of west of India, and I'm heading HR for them as of now.
Fantastic. Very, very interesting journey in different industries as well. Perfect. So where you are now in the business, what really occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the business that I have joined is, first, of course, it's a completely different industry. I've not been associated with the real estate sector before. The real estate sector itself has gone through quite a turbulent time, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years. We recently had a whole new regulatory intervention in the sector, and which is trying to bring a lot of systems, processes, clarity and transparency as far as the customers are concerned. Also, the economy is moving in a certain directions, and we have had uncertainties around the real estate sector. So while I'm learning the nuances of the industry in terms of skill sets, capabilities, talent, competition and all of that, I'm also conscious that the real estate sector itself is going through a transition and moving in a certain direction and in a significantly faster space than it has over the last 10 years. So suddenly what seemed like a standstill, stayed almost immobile kind of space for the last 10 years, suddenly it's catching momentum and everything seems to be moving at the same time. So that's gripping for me, and I'm trying to speed learn all of this. In the HR space also, I think HR is going through its own transformation world over. Skills irrelevance is becoming real like never before. Technology is creating disruptions that we haven't fully put our hands around. Too many things are happening, and in India too, we are adopting AI and chatbots and robotics, even in HR, and every other conversation that I'm part of or panel discussion I'm part of. All the conversations that are around machine learning and artificial intelligence in HR. So I'm also very concerned about losing a bit of humanness from human resources function. Yeah. So I think a lot of balls in the air as far as what occupies my mind. Yeah.
No, of course, definitely a lot occupying your mind there. So where you are now with the transformation, how are you preparing the business for this transformation? What are some of the practical steps that you've taken to prepare the organization for this next evolution?
Yes. Let me give you a small context of the industry, because I believe whatever HR can do or whatever it will do has to be in the context or within the context of the industry and business reality. And if we get that piece right, then the interventions will be right, more or less. Real estate in India, or at least this organization, has largely been a residential player. That means most of their projects in the past, and they've been a fairly traditional organization. They've been in existence for about 60 years now, and have been a major player in the sector. Very, very trusted name from the consumer point of view. So enjoys a very strong loyalty by its customers as well. So all of these are great going. They are solid strengths. But most of this has been in the residential space. So we have not been major players in commercial or hospitality or retail sector, for instance. So going forward, the big transformation from a business point of view is to move from residential to what is called platform projects. And when we mean platform, it means 100, 200 acre lands, large land parcels getting converted over a decade or so, getting developed slowly in parts, and having multiple formats of real estate within that space. So you will have malls, entertainment parks, IT parks, residential complexes, commercial complexes, all within the same vicinity. And the value of the land and the development space, therefore multiplying as the years go by. So this game is a very different game, requiring completely different skill sets in terms of building technologies, connected homes and offices. Simple example being vertical gardens, for instance. We are not today using a lot of these technologies. And one of the ways in which I will need to prepare the organization for this transition is by building a level of preparedness within the organization in terms of systems, processes, and people, talent. Interestingly, I also head digital for the organization. So HR and digital I see as a very synchronistic combination of skill sets, because adopting digital is not just about technology. It is also a huge cultural transition.
Sure,
and
yes.
Mindset transition. And for a country like India, where we have 3 people to do every job, if we want to hire them, using technology is also a moral decision, you see. Should I use this technology, or I would rather hire 4 people to do the job? So I think HR and digital in many ways are connected, and me holding both these portfolios gives me the leverage to be able to take the right decisions in both these areas. So in short, I think creating a technology platform and creating a human resource platform in order to make this transition happen is really my job cut out for me.
Yeah. Very interesting that you're in a position where you can leverage digital and you have that control, because it's quite rare, as you know. So you can also look at it from the people perspective and the human perspective, and digital, and then find that balance based on your experience and, of course, the business needs.
From a human point of view as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
People will lose jobs, and therefore I am, as an HR person, also conscious of that.
No, of course, you're only human, right? Yeah. There's obviously going to be some emotional attachment to that regardless. Yeah. Within, as you know, many of our listeners have offices in India and obviously global teams. How are you currently attracting that new talent to the business? What are you doing to increase your brand awareness? And is there a talent shortage in digital in India? or is there plenty of talent to go around? What's your opinion or your experience?
I think world over, there will always be shortage of the right talent.
Okay, yeah.
While India is 1.2 billion people, right? We are not short of hands, but we may be short of the right minds in certain areas. So if I want to look for very high quality HR person or a very high quality digital transformation leader, I will still struggle for that. So while I say that there is no dearth of people, there will always be dearth of right talent. So all my effort in the last 3 months, a lot of what I have done is to put the organization up on several fronts to open up as an employer of choice for my talent that I need in this industry, which would be high quality engineering talent, high quality architectural and digital talent, design talent, finance and legal talent, and so on. So the places where we hire from, we source these people from, they need to start looking at the organization as a place to work for. So while as a consumer brand, we have a name to reckon with, I'm not very certain we can boast of a name to reckon with as an employer brand yet. Mm-hmm. But you talk to me a year down the line and we will be talking to a very different company.
No problem.
So my effort is really to put us up there on the list of reckoning.
Sure. So I'm sure you're using multiple streams to attract these guys and create brand visibility. Which of the streams are you having most success in? Is it working with external recruiters? Is it software? Do you have embedded in the business? For other businesses who are looking to attract talent in India, what would you recommend or what advice would you give them?
Talent, I think the right kind of talent will be available if you look hard enough. And we are using a lot of technology in our hiring processes. So for instance, we are of course leveraging portals like LinkedIn, and LinkedIn I'm actively engaged on, both to create an employer brand, as well as to be able to attract the right kind of talent. So earlier we used to believe that if all you have to do to get the right talent is to get the right hiring partner, and give a bag full of money and they do all the job. But I don't think that works anymore. Everybody who is doing anything in the workspace today is on the media, social media platforms, and I can reach that person using technology. So I am trying to access a lot of that. While for 20-30% of my hire, I still use consulting partners, because you can't avoid that. Sometimes there is a secret search, sometimes there is a confidential search, and so on. And for those kind of requirements, I still use consulting partners. But interestingly, when it is a small industry, a lot of, I'm discovering this possibility of also using my existing talent as reference points for getting more people on the floor. Yeah. And I'm using a lot of referral hires. If I get my game right on this, by the end of another 6 months, I would have at least 50% of everybody I'm hiring who is known to somebody in my company and has come through an internal source. So yeah, those are the media mixes I use.
Yeah, fantastic. It seems that the point you just mentioned about the internal referrals, it seems that in recent years that's been overlooked as a very good method. Many organizations that I speak with, they don't really bring that up. But as you probably know, it really does shortcut the process, because those individuals understand the requirements of those what those job roles include. They understand what type of culture and people that you're looking for. So it makes perfect sense that you're looking at that.
And in my experience of leading HR for several companies now, I also have come to believe that it's a reflection of engagement of your existing talent. Mm-hmm. I will not refer my company to my colleague or friend or anybody unless I really believe that this is a great place to work.
Yeah, that's true as well. So you're also gauging how engaged, you're also understanding how engaged your employees are, because if they're enjoying their role in the organization and they feel valued, then they're going to make more of an effort to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes sense. And of course, they want to work with good people, right? So they're not going to bring anyone else to the table.
Usually having a friend at work is supposed to be a great source of engagement.
Until you become their manager.
That's right.
It makes it a bit more difficult. Are you leveraging Facebook? Because I know they've launched a global platform
Mhm.
now.
Yes, we have a Facebook company corporate page,
Hmm.
and we post happening things, but not as much as we are using Twitter or the company website or LinkedIn.
Well, I know that Facebook
Facebook
have.
is lower down the pecking for us.
Oh, okay, because I know that Facebook have recently launched a recruitment tool, so you might want to look into that as well.
Yeah, I might, but at the
Hmm.
moment it comes after the other three options. Twitter, we use Twitter regularly. Company website, of course,
Hmm.
and LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and then Facebook.
No, of course. Well, going back to your previous role, because I know you spent a lot of time within that organization in the retail sector. Could you
Uh-huh.
share a project or success story that comes to mind that you're most proud of?
I think culture transformation has been one of my most satisfying career experiences. While all of us in the profession of HR do a lot of things in setting up performance management processes and policies and systems framework and talent management and all of that, I think a fundamental body of work that I have led from a design phase to a satisfactory completion phase is culture transformation. In my previous organization, which I mentioned on lifestyle and fashion company that I was part of, we started off, that's again a 90-year-old organization, almost completing a century. And some of their uh, cultural tenets were in many ways frozen in time, and there was a need to contemporize because fashion changes every quarter. We release 2 seasons of fashion at least. I mean, there should be 4 or 5, but at least we have a spring, summer, and autumn, winter collection. And so things seem to be changing so rapidly. And what we wanted to do was to look at our core values and therefore the culture and see how that needs to transition in order to enable the organization become more contemporary and relevant to times. What we did there was to start off with what is the new context.
Hmm.
That is to say, what is my end state looking like? And we put a design down to that and said that if I'm successful in this transition, what should it look like? And in doing this, we engaged a lot of stakeholders, both old people who are wedded to the old way, so to speak, and also several new people who had joined the team by then, who we expected to lead the journey forward, because they're coming with new skill sets, they understand where we are going, they are driven by their own aspiration to get somewhere, and so on. So we engage a whole set of what we call a core vision community and put down a design for what we collectively thought the future should look like. Then we did an exhaustive exercise on putting a finger on where we are today, vis-a-vis those future tenets. Some of that was very painful to do for our old guard, because it is to really accept the truth and say, okay, if agility was a tenet for the future, how agile are we today? How our bureaucratic systems, our consensus-based decision making, really are pulling us down and really stopping us from being agile. What needs to be a 24-hour decision making takes 24 days, and maybe at the end of it, everybody's on board, and we may probably, have an 80% right decision. But was it worth it? Will we be okay to do that when things are changing overnight now? The speed of change has changed some of the context for us in that sense. So it was painful for some of our old guard, but we put a finger on where we are today on that, and then created a roadmap of change. Now the roadmap of change had 3 or 4 pillars. One was systems and processes, which included things like, what do we reward and recognize for? What are the behaviors we will acknowledge? And what are the behaviors we will reprimand? Or I punish is the wrong word, but what is it that we will call out as not okay? What performance management process will recognize, acknowledge, and defer? So performance management processes, the policies, the reward and recognition programs, all of this need to speak the same language in order to move this engine forward. So that just reminds me that even as you have your head in the clouds, you have some ground level paving of the stones to be done.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can't avoid that.
So it has the systems and processes as one big pillar.
Mm-hmm.
It has the softer elements of behaviors as a second pillar. What is the right behavior? What's the wrong behavior? For instance, transparency was one of the culture pillars. And when we said transparency, we meant even transparency to the customer. For an employee, for an organization that traditionally believed that information is power, for instance, that big bosses are kept their power because they selectively gave out information they believed somebody needed. Mm-hmm. And people had to come to them to beg for more. Now from there to move to saying information is free, anybody can take an action as well as you can if they have all the information that you have. Those kind of things were not easy, but we had to kind of word it out and spell it out and put it out there, in simple examples, and say that these are the acceptable behaviors and these are the not acceptable behaviors, and create a body of understanding around that. For instance, KRAs and performance of top 100 leaders were put out on our company website, just to say that that's how transparent we can get. So performance appraisal for these 100 people was not only by the manager, but the whole company could see whether somebody had written down their key result areas at the beginning of the year, and as each quarter progressed, how they're doing.
Oh, wow.
Nobody could hide this, right? Now, this is an example of transparency, and you can't refute that. So if that can be transparent, what else need to be hidden? I mean, people get the message. So there is a whole piece on behaviors that we had to set. Then we had what we like to call symbols and stories. Now, these are softer nuances of culture building, where we create, for instance, bias for action was one of our culture pillars. We said one symbol for that could be having standing meetings. So if people sit down and have 3 cups of tea and spend an hour in that conversation, just the fact they are sitting down comfortably, tea is coming, cookies are coming, and they are spending an hour in that conversation, need not be you huddle, the right people, 5 people huddle in a corner, discuss the point, disperse, take a decision and disperse. So that's a symbol. It's symbolic towards the culture that you want to create. So in short, we defined where we want to go. We put a finger on where we are today, and we tried to create a roadmap, and that lasted for this was a 60-month roadmap, so 5 years. And on that roadmap, we built systems and processes. We built behavior patterns as in acceptable and not acceptable behaviors. And we created certain symbols and stories on the new culture. I would say around the time I quit, that is 4 months back, we were looking back with nostalgia with me and my CEO as to where we have come. And that was a very pleasant conversation.
I can imagine. It's quite strange in this day and age even to think in the way that you mentioned earlier about power being seen as whoever has the most information holds the power, and that's so. But that just shows how the culture of the organization needed to be brought forward into the 21st century. And I can only imagine along that way you had a lot of challenges and a lot of people were pretty upset about that balance. And probably sort of, so looking back along that journey, I'm sure there was a lot of challenges that you faced, but for any other HR leader going through a similar transformation, what advice would you give them that you wish you heard before you jumped on that journey?
One certain advice would be that expect a lot of landmines. A surface may look plain, but as you step on it, something can blast. Especially in the space of culture, you really don't know where the roots are and how deep it goes. And people are very emotional and personal about the culture. So expect a lot of landmines. Tread very, very slowly, because here fast is slow. So you really, really have to tread slowly, take one small step at a time, test waters, then keep the next foot forward, because you can't afford to have enemies in the journey. That makes your movement very difficult. And you don't even know when you're creating those enemies, because they are not directly your views, your thoughts, even your vision for the future would have already created enemies.
Yeah.
Because they would believe that this is not where we should go, right? So engage as many people as you can, because it's easy for 4 people who are committed to the future to come together and create a vision, but it will never happen if 100 other people sitting outside the room are feeling alienated about this. So engage as many people. And there, I think the modern thought, and one of the, I call the new skill sets of HR, I call it the D cube. D cube as in 3D. 3D is design, digital, and dialogue. Design is design thinking. Now, if I knew design thinking 6 years back, and I didn't know design thinking 6 years back, I intuitively did what I thought was right. But if I engaged a lot of people, empathized with their reality of how committed they are to the organization, and therefore did what they thought was right at that time, the only difference is it's not relevant today. But if I empathize with them, I get it. And therefore, the way I would go about it, I would treat it with much more tenderness and compassion than I would do with judgment.
Yeah.
So I think one definite advice is treat the journey, go slowly, engage as many people as you can, and look at past with compassion.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that leads us quite nicely onto the quick fire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready? What's the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
Oh, that's easy. That I would put as fear. F-E-A-R, fear. Fear of coming short. And I really, the definition that I like about fear is not what holds you back, or courage is not the absence of fear. It is to be able to move forward in spite of fear. And I think, fortunately for me, I mustered courage at the time when I thought I was stepping into a role that I was not prepared to take at that point in time. It would be fear.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Know your customer and external environment better than your sales and marketing guys and business guys. I think the time for HR people to look inside out is over. We will be relevant to the business only if we are now one more source of outside in.
Fantastic.
For the seat.
What's one book that you would recommend to our listeners, and why?
Okay, that should be The New Earth. It has nothing to do with HR, but it has a lot to do with spirituality and mindfulness. The New Earth is by Eckhart Tolle, and it has been a life-changing book for me.
Okay, fantastic. And can you share one internet resource that you use to keep up to date with current events and increase your own productivity?
I use quite a few of them. I mean, let me think about this. I use an interesting one called the Gratitude 365.
Okay.
This is a daily recording of things that I'm thankful for on a daily basis. And I believe that keeps me grounded and humble in what I do. And when I come to work, I think that is one quality I would like to bring every day, and not flaunt my role or position or any knowledge or any of that. The other one I use is doit.in. This is a daily to-do lists online. It's an interesting one. It's easy for me to use, so that I use Flipboard to keep me updated on what's happening around the world. I use Flock often to connect with my colleagues on work-related matters. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'll certainly link them all in the description. And what's one thing that excites you the most about your business today?
I think the ambition and aspiration to be a jewel in the haystack, as my MD puts it, is to say that while we have a very enviable position in the consumer's mind of being a trusted real estate player, we would like to be an enviable, aspirational place of work for our employees of the future as well. So we will be an aspirational product for the customer and an aspirational company for our employees. And that, I think, keeps me excited.
Yeah, certainly.
And Chris, you need to ask me one more question. What is the one mistake I almost made?
What was that?
I need to say this because for a lot of my colleagues, especially in India, I think one mistake I almost made was to put my career on a slow pedal or a second fiddle to other gender expectations from my gender in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think while I'm also a mother and a wife and everything else that a woman can be, at different points of my career, there has been immense pressure to put my career on a sort of slow burn. And I think that's one mistake I would have almost made at some points, and I wouldn't have gotten here.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's a very important point that needs to be made. And so thank you very much for sharing that. Well, you've been an amazing guest, so thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Give our listeners one parting piece of guidance, and also the best way to get in contact with you.
Okay, I think I've given a lot of guidance already, no?
If there's one message that you want to give to other HR leaders, what would that be?
That I have written myself, and I think I should make a quote of this or something like that. But listen to it exactly the way I've written it, okay? I'm going to read this out because I wrote this somewhere as a title of my book or something, and I've kept it like that. Script life's lessons on sand. That way you have a clean slate the very next moment. So, which means that no learning in life is permanent. You write something, you look back, and it's washed away. You get space to write it all over again, which means be flexible, learn continuously, and be okay with change.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad I asked that question now. Well, look, thank you again. You've been a very amazing guest. Guys, make sure you head over to hrdleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes from the episode, everything we've been talking about, all of the links that have been mentioned. Geethaa, thank you again for sharing your journey, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Okay?
Pleasure, Chris. Thank you.